The morning sun beat down on the little whitewashed church in Roswell, New Mexico, and Natalie Kensington stood alone at the altar in her mother's ivory wedding dress, watching the last of the congregation shuffle out with their heads bowed in pity, while her groom's best man stammered apologies she could barely hear over the roaring in her ears. It was June 14th, 1882, and the man she had loved since she was 16 years old had disappeared without a word, leaving her standing like a fool in front of everyone she had ever known in this dusty corner of the New Mexico territory. The preacher, Reverend Walsh, touched her shoulder gently, his weathered face creased with concern. "Miss Natalie, perhaps you should sit down. Let me fetch you some water." She shook her head, her hands trembling as they clutched the bouquet of white desert lilies her younger sister had gathered that morning. "No, thank you, Reverend. I just need a moment alone if you do not mind." He nodded slowly, exchanging a worried glance with her father, who stood near the back pew with his jaw clenched so tight she thought he might break his teeth. Thomas Kensington had spent nearly $2,000 on this wedding, money their ranch could barely spare after the drought last summer. Now it was all for nothing. As the church emptied, Natalie finally allowed herself to sink onto the front pew, her elaborate skirts pooling around her like a collapsed cloud. The dress had taken her mother and two aunts 3 months to sew, every stitch placed with love and hope for her future. She pressed her palm against her chest, trying to ease the physical ache that had settled there. Robert Morrison. She had known him her entire life. Their fathers' ranches shared a border, and they had grown up riding together across the scrubland, sharing dreams beneath the endless New Mexico sky. He had proposed last Christmas, slipping a simple gold band onto her finger while they stood beneath the cottonwood tree by the creek that separated their properties. He had promised her forever. The church door creaked open, and Natalie looked up, a foolish spark of hope flaring in her chest that maybe Robert had returned, that there was some explanation for all this. But it was not Robert. Instead, a tall stranger stepped inside, removing his dusty brown Stetson hat as he entered. He had dark hair that fell just past his collar, sun-bronzed skin, and eyes the color of creek water in summer. His clothes marked him as a working cowboy, worn denim and a faded blue shirt with a leather vest, spurs that jingled softly with each step. "Pardon me, miss," he said, his voice low and respectful. "I was passing through town and saw folks leaving the church looking mighty troubled. Are you all right?" Natalie almost laughed at the absurdity of the question. Was she all right? She had just been abandoned at her own wedding. "I am perfectly fine, thank you," she said, her voice brittle. "Just enjoying some quiet time in my wedding dress with no groom to be found." The stranger winced. "I am sorry. That was a stupid question." He moved a few steps closer, his hat still in his hands. "What kind of man leaves a woman like you standing at the altar? Apparently the kind I was foolish enough to agree to marry." She looked down at the ring still on her finger and twisted it roughly. "His best man said Robert left a note. Said he could not go through with it, that he realized he was not ready for marriage. Not ready after courting me for 4 years." The stranger was quiet for a moment, and Natalie could feel his gaze on her. When she finally looked up, she found something unexpected in his expression, something fierce and protective that seemed out of place coming from a man she had never met. "I do not know you, miss, and you do not know me," he said slowly. "But I have been drifting for 3 years now, ever since my family lost our ranch up in Colorado. I have seen a lot of cowards and a lot of good people, and I can tell just by looking that you are one of the good ones. You do not deserve this." "Thank you," Natalie whispered, surprised by the genuine kindness in his voice. "That is kind of you to say." He took another step forward, then seemed to hesitate. My name is Samuel Young. Most folks call me Sam. And I know this is going to sound crazy, seeing as how we just met, but I want to make you an offer." Natalie frowned, confusion replacing some of her misery. "What kind of offer?" Sam met her eyes directly, and she saw no deception there, only an earnest sincerity that made her heart skip. "I will stand beside you if you will have me. Right here, right now. If you want to go through with this wedding, I will be your groom." For a moment, Natalie was certain she had misheard him. "You cannot be serious." "I am completely serious." He moved closer still, close enough that she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the old scar above his left eyebrow. "Look, I know how small towns work. By tomorrow morning, everyone in Roswell is going to be talking about how you got jilted. They will look at you different, treat you different. Some will pity you, others will say cruel things about why your intended ran off. But if you go through with this wedding, if you marry me instead, then you get to hold your head high. You get to walk out of this church as a married woman, and no one can take that dignity away from you." Natalie stood up slowly, her mind reeling. "You do not even know me. Why would you do this?" Sam shrugged, a crooked smile playing at his lips. "Maybe I am tired of drifting. Maybe I think a woman brave enough to still be standing after what just happened is exactly the kind of partner a man should want. Or maybe I just do not like the idea of that coward winning, of you suffering because of his weakness." "This is insane," Natalie said, but her voice lacked conviction. She thought about walking out those church doors, about facing her family and friends, about the pitying looks and whispered gossip that would follow her for years. She thought about her father's disappointed face and her mother's tears. She thought about Robert, probably riding hard for California or Texas or anywhere far from here, free as a bird while she bore the shame of his abandonment. "Maybe it is," Sam agreed. "But I give you my word that if you say yes, I will be a decent husband to you. I will work hard, I will treat you with respect, and I will never make you regret taking a chance on a stranger." Natalie looked at him, really looked at him. There was something steady in his gaze, something solid and real that Robert, for all his pretty promises, had never quite possessed. This man was offering her a lifeline, a way to salvage something from this disaster. "If I agree to this," she said carefully, "I need you to understand something. I am not some fragile flower who needs rescuing. My father owns the Double K Ranch, 3,000 acres of good grazing land. I can rope and ride as well as any man in this county. I keep the books for the ranch, and I have opinions about how things should be run. If you are looking for a meek, obedient wife who will just cook and clean and stay quiet, then you are proposing to the wrong woman." Sam's smile widened into a genuine grin. "Miss Kensington, I would not want you any other way." She took a shaky breath, her mind racing through possibilities and consequences. This was madness, absolute madness. But the alternative, walking out of this church unmarried and humiliated, facing years of judgment and pity, seemed somehow worse. "What if we regret this?" she asked quietly. "What if we do not?" he countered. Natalie looked down at her bouquet, at the carefully chosen flowers that were already starting to wilt in the heat. She thought about all the dreams she had built around Robert Morrison, all the plans they had made together. Those dreams were ashes now. But maybe, just maybe, she could build something new from the ruins. She lifted her chin and met Sam's eyes. "All right, Samuel Young, I will marry you." His eyebrows rose as if he had not quite expected her to agree. "You mean it?" "I do," she said, then laughed shakily at the appropriateness of the words. "I suppose I should get used to saying that." Sam put his hat back on and strode quickly to the door, pushing it open. "Reverend Walsh, sir, if you are still nearby, we need you back in here." Natalie heard her father's voice, sharp with confusion. What is going on? Who are you? My name is Samuel Young, sir, and your daughter has agreed to marry me. If you will give us your blessing, we would like to proceed with the ceremony." There was a moment of stunned silence, and then her mother's voice, high and bewildered. "Natalie, what is happening?" Natalie moved to the doorway, and the small group that had lingered outside turned to stare at her. Her parents, her sister Lily, her Aunt Margaret, and Reverend Walsh all wore expressions of complete shock. "Mama, Papa," Natalie said, forcing strength into her voice. "This is Sam Young. He has offered to marry me, and I have accepted. I would very much like to go through with the wedding if Reverend Walsh is willing." Her father looked like he had been struck by lightning. "Natalie, this is madness. You cannot marry a complete stranger." "Why not?" she shot back. "I thought I knew Robert Morrison for 20 years, and look where that got me. At least Sam has been honest about who he is from the start. At least he is here, standing beside me, which is more than I can say for the man I thought loved me." Her mother pressed a handkerchief to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. "Thomas, we cannot let her do this." But her father was studying Sam with hard, measuring eyes. "What do you do for a living, Mr. Young? How do you plan to support my daughter?" "I am a ranch hand, sir. I have been working spreads from Colorado to Texas for the past few years. I am good with cattle and horses. I can mend fence, break broncs, and I am not afraid of hard work. I do not have much money saved, but I have 2 strong hands and a willingness to build something lasting." Sam met her father's gaze without flinching. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but I promise you that I will take care of your daughter to the best of my ability." Thomas Kensington was silent for a long moment, his jaw working. Finally, he looked at Natalie. "Is this truly what you want, girl?" Natalie thought about lying, about making up some story about love at first sight, but she had never been good at lying to her father. "What I want is to not be broken by what Robert did. I want to walk out of this church married the way I was supposed to. Sam is offering me that chance, and I am taking it." Her father sighed heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 53 years. "Then I suppose we had better get on with it. Reverend, if you would be so kind." Reverend Walsh looked deeply uncertain, but he nodded slowly. "If this is truly what you both want, I will perform the ceremony. But I would ask that you take a few minutes to discuss what you are undertaking. Marriage is a sacred bond, not to be entered into lightly." "With respect, Reverend," Sam said quietly, "I do not think either of us is taking this lightly. We both know exactly what we are doing and why." The small group filed back into the church, and Natalie found her hand suddenly enclosed in her sister's grip. Lily was 18, 2 years younger than Natalie, with the same auburn hair and green eyes. "Are you sure about this?" Lily whispered urgently. "He could be anyone. He could be dangerous." Natalie squeezed her sister's hand. "Look at him, Lily. Really look at him. Does he seem dangerous to you?" Lily glanced at Sam, who was speaking quietly with their father near the altar, his posture respectful but not submissive. "He seems kind," she admitted, "but that does not mean you should marry him." "Maybe not," Natalie agreed, "but I am doing it anyway." Reverend Walsh called them forward, and Natalie found herself standing at the altar again, but this time with Sam beside her instead of empty space. He had removed his hat again and was holding it against his chest, his expression solemn. "Before we begin," the Reverend said, "I want both of you to understand what you are committing to. Marriage is a covenant before God, a promise to stand together through whatever life brings. Samuel, do you understand that you will be responsible for Natalie's welfare, that you will be expected to provide for her and protect her?" "I do, sir," Sam said firmly. "And Natalie, do you understand that you will be bound to this man, that you will leave your father's house and cleave unto your husband?" Natalie's throat felt tight, but she forced the words out. I do. The Reverend nodded and opened his Bible. Then let us proceed. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. The familiar words washed over Natalie, and she felt as if she were watching herself from a great distance. This morning, she had stood in this exact spot expecting to marry Robert. Now she was marrying a stranger who had walked into her life less than an hour ago. It was impossible. It was insane. It was happening. Samuel Young, you take Natalie Rose Kensington to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part. Sam turned to face her fully, and when he spoke, his voice was steady and sure. I do. And do you, Natalie Rose Kensington, take Samuel Young to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do you part. Natalie looked into Sam's creek-water eyes and thought about the leap of faith she was taking, the bridge she was burning. There would be no going back from this moment. I do, she whispered. You have a ring? Reverend Walsh asked Sam. Sam looked momentarily stricken, and Natalie realized he had not thought that far ahead. But before either of them could speak, her father stepped forward and pressed something into Sam's hand. This was my father's, Thomas said gruffly. Seems right that it should go to my daughter's husband. Sam looked down at the simple gold band, worn smooth with age, and then at Thomas. Sir, I cannot take this. It is a family heirloom. You are family now, Thomas said, though his voice was heavy. Or you will be in about 30 seconds. Take it. Sam nodded, visibly moved. He turned to Natalie and reached for her left hand, where Robert's ring still sat. She quickly pulled it off and let it fall to the floor, not caring where it landed. Sam slid his grandfather's ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting for her all along. By the power vested in me by the territory of New Mexico, Reverend Walsh said, I now pronounce you man and wife. Samuel, you may kiss your bride. Sam hesitated, his eyes searching Natalie's face for permission. She gave the smallest nod, and he leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. His lips brushed against hers, gentle and brief, and Natalie felt a strange flutter in her stomach that had nothing to do with fear. When they pulled apart, she was married. To a stranger. To Samuel Young, a drifting cowboy who had offered her his name and his promise of protection for reasons she still did not fully understand. Her mother was crying again, but these tears seemed different, less anguished and more confused. Lily hugged her tightly, whispering, I hope you know what you are doing. So do I, Natalie murmured back. Her father shook Sam's hand firmly. I expect you to keep your word, young man. My daughter deserves a good husband. She does, sir, Sam agreed. And I will do everything in my power to be that for her. They signed the marriage certificate, Natalie's hand only shaking slightly as she wrote her name, watching as Sam signed his in a neat, careful script beside hers. It was real now, official and binding. She was Natalie Young. As they left the church together, stepping out into the bright afternoon sun, Natalie realized she had no idea what happened next. She and Robert had planned to have a reception at her parents' ranch, then spend their wedding night in the hotel in town, before heading to the small house Robert's father had built for them on Morrison land. But none of those plans applied anymore. Her mother seemed to have the same thought. Thomas, what are we going to do about the reception? We have food prepared for 100 people. Thomas rubbed his jaw, then looked at Sam and Natalie. Well, I suppose we carry on as planned. We will tell folks there was a change of groom, but the wedding happened all the same. It will cause talk, but everything is going to cause talk anyway. We might as well feed people while they gossip. Sam glanced at Natalie. It is your decision. We can go to the reception or we can skip it, whatever you prefer. Natalie thought about hiding, about running away from the curious stares and whispered questions. But she had never been a coward, and she was not about to start now. We go to the reception, she said firmly. We hold our heads high and dare anyone to say something unkind to our faces. Sam's lips quirked. That is the spirit, Mrs. Young. Mrs. Young. The name sent a shiver through her, strange and foreign and irrevocable. The ride to the Double K Ranch took 30 minutes, with Natalie sitting beside Sam in her father's wagon while her parents and sister followed in their own. Sam handled the horses with easy competence, his hands steady on the reins. Tell me about yourself, Natalie said, breaking the awkward silence. If we are married, I should probably know more than just your name. Sam smiled slightly. What would you like to know? Everything. Where you are from, what happened to your family's ranch, why you have been drifting. I want to know who I just married. He was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the dusty road ahead. I was born in Colorado, near Denver. My father had a small ranch, nothing grand, but it was ours. We raised cattle and bred horses. I had a younger brother, Jacob, who was 15 when we lost the place. What happened? Natalie asked gently. Drought first, then disease among the cattle. We lost half the herd in 6 months. My father borrowed money to try to keep us afloat, but we could not make the payments. The bank took everything. His voice was matter-of-fact, but Natalie could hear the old pain beneath it. My mother had died when I was 12, so it was just the 3 of us. After we lost the ranch, my father and Jacob went to live with my aunt in Kansas City. She did not have room for all of us, and besides, I was old enough to make my own way. How old were you? Natalie asked. 21. That was 3 years ago. I have been working ranches ever since, moving when the work runs out or when the restlessness gets too strong. He glanced at her. I am not running from the law if that is what you are worried about. Never stole anything, never killed anyone. I am just a man who lost his home and has been looking for a new one ever since. Natalie absorbed this information, trying to fit it together with the man beside her. Do you miss your father and brother? Every day, Sam admitted. I write to them when I can, send money when I have it. Jacob would be 18 now. Last letter I got, he was working at a printing press learning the trade. My father does bookkeeping for a grain merchant. They are making a life for themselves. You could have stayed with them, Natalie pointed out. I could have, Sam agreed. But I did not want to be a burden. And truth be told, Kansas City never felt right to me. I belong out here, under open sky with land stretching to the horizon. I just needed to find the right place to put down roots again. And you think Roswell is that place? Natalie asked. Or did you just make a very impulsive decision that you are already starting to regret? Sam turned to look at her fully, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. I do not regret it, Natalie. I know you do not have any reason to believe me yet, but I meant what I said in that church. I will do right by you. She wanted to believe him. God help her, she did. My turn, she said, trying to lighten the mood. What do you want to know about me? Tell me about the ranch. Your father said it is 3,000 acres. Natalie nodded, grateful for the familiar topic. The Double K has been in my mother's family for 30 years. My grandfather started it when this was still untamed territory. We run about 800 head of cattle, mostly longhorns mixed with some Hereford stock. We have good water rights from the Pecos River, and the grazing is decent most years. Last summer was hard with the drought, but we are recovering. You really do keep the books? Sam asked, since I was 16. My father is good with cattle but terrible with numbers. I manage all the finances, handle the contracts with buyers, keep track of supplies and wages. My mother says it is not proper work for a lady, but I enjoy it." She smiled wryly. "I suppose that is part of why Robert ran. He wanted a wife who would stay in the house and focus on domestic duties. I told him I intended to keep working with the ranch business after we married, and he was never entirely comfortable with that." "Then he was a fool twice over," Sam said firmly. "A woman with a good head for business is an asset, not something to be ashamed of." Natalie felt warmth bloom in her chest at his words. Robert had always made her feel like her interest in the ranch was something she should outgrow, a childish hobby rather than a real skill. "Thank you for saying that. I am not just saying it, I mean it." He paused. "Your father mentioned you can rope and ride. Did he mean that, or was he exaggerating for my benefit?" "I can outride most of the men who work for us," Natalie said matter-of-factly. "I have been on a horse since before I could walk. I can rope a running calf, brand cattle, help with foaling mares. My father raised me to help run the ranch, not just to sit in a parlor doing needlepoint." Sam grinned. "You are full of surprises, Mrs. Young. You have no idea," Natalie murmured. They arrived at the ranch to find that word of the wedding drama had already spread. The guests who had made the trip out from town were clustered in small groups, talking in hushed tones. When the wagon pulled up and Natalie stepped down with Sam beside her, every conversation stopped. Natalie straightened her spine and lifted her chin. Sam moved close to her side, and she felt the solid warmth of his presence, unexpectedly comforting. Together they walked toward the gathered crowd. Her Aunt Margaret was the first to approach, her face a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Natalie, dear, is it true? Did you really marry this young man?" "I did, Aunt Margaret," Natalie said clearly, making sure her voice carried. "This is my husband, Samuel Young. Sam, this is my Aunt Margaret Brennan." Sam tipped his hat politely. "Pleased to meet you, madam." Aunt Margaret looked him up and down, then surprised everyone by smiling. "Well, you are a good deal more handsome than Robert Morrison ever was, so I would say my niece traded up. Welcome to the family, Samuel." The tension broke slightly, and other guests began to approach, offering congratulations that ranged from genuine to baffled. Natalie answered questions as vaguely as possible, saying only that she and Sam had met before, and had decided not to let the day go to waste when Robert failed to appear. The reception unfolded in a surreal haze. Tables laden with food covered the lawn behind the ranch house, and a small band played cheerful music that seemed at odds with the undercurrent of gossip. Natalie danced with her father, who held her tightly and whispered, "I hope you know what you are doing, daughter." "I am making the best of a terrible situation," she whispered back. "That is all any of us can do." She danced with Sam next, and was surprised to find that he moved with easy grace, his hand warm and steady at her waist. "You dance well," she said. "My mother insisted Jacob and I learn," Sam explained. "She said a gentleman should know how to dance properly." "I think she had hopes we would marry above our station." "Did you have a sweetheart back in Colorado?" Natalie asked, realizing how little she knew about his romantic past. Sam shook his head. "There was a girl I was fond of, but she married a banker's son. I have not had time for courting these past few years, moving from place to place." "And now you are married to a woman you met this morning," Natalie said. "How did this become your life?" "I could ask you the same thing," Sam pointed out, "but I am not sorry it did. Are you?" Natalie looked up at him, at the honest concern in his eyes. "Ask me again in a month," she said softly, "when this all feels a little less like a fever dream." As the sun began to set, painting the New Mexico sky in shades of orange and crimson, Natalie realized she needed to address the elephant in the room. She and Sam were married now, which meant they would be expected to spend the night together. The hotel room in town was already reserved, and everyone would expect them to go there. Her mother pulled her aside as the guests began to depart. "Natalie, I want you to know that if you need anything, if you are frightened or uncertain, you can come home. Marriage is a serious commitment, but you are still my daughter." "I know, Mama," Natalie said, hugging her tightly, "but I am not frightened. Sam has been nothing but respectful. I think it will be all right." She hoped she was right. Sam borrowed a horse from the Double K stable, and they rode into Roswell together as twilight deepened into night. Natalie had changed out of her wedding dress into a more practical traveling outfit, and Sam had stowed their few belongings in saddlebags. The hotel clerk's eyebrows rose when they asked for the room reserved under Morrison, but Sam handled it smoothly, explaining there had been a change of name. They climbed the stairs in silence, and Natalie's heart hammered as Sam unlocked the door. The room was small but clean, with a double bed covered in a patchwork quilt, a washstand, and a single window overlooking the street. Someone, probably her mother, had left a vase of flowers on the dresser and a bottle of wine with 2 glasses. Sam closed the door behind them and immediately moved to the far side of the room, putting as much distance between them as possible. "Natalie, I want you to know that I do not expect anything from you tonight. I meant what I said about treating you with respect, and that includes giving you time to adjust to all this." Natalie felt a rush of relief mixed with something else she could not quite name. Gratitude, certainly, but also a strange disappointment. "Thank you," she said. "That is very kind." "I can sleep on the floor," Sam offered, "or in the chair if you would be more comfortable." "The floor of a hotel room on your wedding night," Natalie shook her head. "That seems excessive. The bed is large enough for both of us, and I trust you to keep your word." Sam looked uncertain. "Are you sure?" "I am sure," Natalie said with more confidence than she felt. She moved to the washstand and began to unpin her hair, letting the long auburn waves fall down her back. In the mirror, she could see Sam watching her, his expression unreadable. They prepared for bed in awkward silence, taking turns changing behind the dressing screen. When Natalie emerged in her white cotton nightgown, Sam was already in bed, positioned as far to one side as possible without falling off. He had left the lamp burning low. She climbed in beside him, intensely aware of his presence, the warmth radiating from his body across the small space between them. "Sam," she said into the darkness. "Yes." "Why did you really do this? Please do not tell me it was just to be kind." "No one does something this extreme just out of kindness to a stranger." She heard him shift, and when he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "You remember when I said I had been drifting, looking for a place to belong?" "Yes." "When I walked into that church and saw you standing there, so heartbroken but so brave, refusing to crumble even though your world had just fallen apart, something inside me recognized something in you. I know that sounds like nonsense, but it is the truth. I looked at you and thought, here is a person worth building a life with. Here is someone strong enough to weather storms, someone who would not give up when things got hard." He paused. "I guess I wanted to be the kind of man who would stand beside someone like that. And selfishly, I hoped maybe you would let me stay." Natalie felt tears prick her eyes. "That might be the most honest thing anyone has ever said to me." "You asked for the truth," Sam said simply. They lay in silence for a while, and gradually Natalie felt her tense muscles begin to relax. Sam's breathing deepened, and she realized he had fallen asleep. She studied his profile in the dim lamplight, the strong line of his jaw, the way his dark hair fell across his forehead. She had married this man. This stranger who had walked into her life and changed everything in the space of an hour. It was madness, but as she finally drifted toward sleep, Natalie found herself thinking that maybe, just maybe, it was the best decision she could have made. The next morning, they rode back to the Double K Ranch together. Natalie had sent word through her father that Sam would be working as one of the ranch hands, earning his keep rather than living off her family's charity. Sam had insisted on it, refusing to be seen as someone who had married for money or position. Her father met them in the yard, his expression still wary but slightly warmer than the day before. "Sam, I have got Miguel, our foreman, ready to show you around. We need help mending the fence line on the eastern pasture, and then there is work to be done in the breaking corral. Think you can handle that?" "Yes, sir," Sam said immediately. He glanced at Natalie. "I will see you this evening. I will be here," she assured him. She watched as Sam followed Miguel toward the barns, already deep in conversation about the work that needed doing. Her mother appeared at her elbow, linking their arms together. "How was last night?" she asked delicately. "Did he treat you well?" "He was a perfect gentleman, Mama," Natalie said. "He slept on his side of the bed and did not press me for anything. He is a good man, I think." "I hope you are right, darling. Your father spoke with some of the hands who know Sam by reputation. They say he is an honest worker, skilled with livestock, never causes trouble." "That is something, at least." Natalie spent the morning going over the ranch accounts, trying to focus on numbers and profit margins rather than on the fact that her entire life had changed in the span of a day. But her mind kept drifting to Sam, wondering how he was handling the hard physical labor, whether he was regretting his impulsive offer. At noon, she brought lunch out to the men working on the fence line, driving the wagon herself with Lily beside her. They found Sam stripped to his undershirt, his skin gleaming with sweat as he stretched new wire between posts. He looked up when the wagon approached and broke into a smile when he saw her. "Mrs. Young," he said, wiping his face with a cloth. "This is a welcome sight." "I thought you might be hungry," Natalie said, trying not to stare at the way his muscles moved as he worked. "How is it going?" "Good. Your father was right about this fence needing work. Some of these posts are half rotted through." He took the sandwich she offered and bit into it gratefully. "This is delicious. Thank you." Miguel walked over, a weathered man in his 50s with keen dark eyes. "Your husband is a hard worker, Senora Natalie. He does not complain and he knows his way around a fence line." "That is good to hear," Natalie said, oddly pleased by the compliment on Sam's behalf. As the men ate, Lily pulled Natalie aside. "He is very handsome," she whispered. "And the way he looks at you, Nat, like you are something precious." "He barely knows me," Natalie protested. "Maybe. But he chose you anyway." Lily squeezed her hand. "I think you might have gotten lucky, despite everything." Over the following weeks, Natalie began to believe her sister might be right. Sam threw himself into ranch work with tireless determination, rising before dawn and working until dark. He never complained, never shirked a task, and slowly began to earn the respect of the other ranch hands. In the evenings, he and Natalie would sit together on the porch of the small cabin her father had given them to live in, a one-room structure that had previously housed the foreman. It was humble, but it was theirs, and Natalie found herself growing fond of it. They talked during those evening hours, sharing stories from their pasts, learning each other's likes and dislikes. Sam loved coffee strong enough to strip paint and hated lima beans. Natalie loved thunderstorms and hated the feeling of wool against her skin. Sam could play the harmonica, and sometimes he would play while Natalie read aloud from the books she borrowed from her mother. They were building something, Natalie realized. Not a grand passion like the poets wrote about, but something steadier. A foundation of friendship and respect that might, with time, grow into something deeper. Sam continued to sleep on his side of the bed, never pushing for more intimacy than Natalie was ready to give. But gradually, the space between them shrank. First, she stopped flinching when he accidentally brushed against her. Then she started reaching for his hand when they walked together. Small touches, tentative and careful, testing the waters of this strange marriage they had entered. One evening in late July, about 6 weeks after their wedding, they were sitting on the porch watching lightning flash on the horizon when Sam suddenly said, "I got a letter from my father today." Natalie looked up from her mending. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, everyone is well. I wrote to him after the wedding telling him what happened. His letter just caught up with me." Sam pulled the worn paper from his pocket. "He says he is proud of me for stepping up, for not letting you face that humiliation alone. He wants to meet you someday." "I would like that," Natalie said sincerely. "What about your brother? What did Jacob think?" Sam smiled. "Jacob wrote a separate note. He says, and I quote, 'I cannot believe you got married before me. How is it fair that the brother who never even courted anyone properly ended up with a wife first? She must be very special to have agreed to such a crazy scheme. Take care of her, or I will ride down there and thrash you myself.'" Natalie laughed, the sound surprising her with its genuine amusement. "I like your brother already." "He would like you too," Sam said softly. He reached out and took her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. "Natalie, I know we have not talked much about what this marriage is or what it might become, but I want you to know something. These past weeks, getting to know you, working beside you and your family, have been some of the best of my life. I do not regret a single moment, and I hope you do not either." Natalie looked at their joined hands, at the calluses on his palm from hard work, at the way his fingers curled protectively around hers. "I do not regret it," she said quietly. "When Robert left me at that altar, I thought my life was over. I thought I would spend the rest of my years being pitied and whispered about, defined by someone else's cowardice. But you gave me a different story to tell. You gave me dignity and a fresh start, and I will never forget that." "I did not do it so you would be grateful to me," Sam said. "I did it because I wanted to. I know, but I am grateful anyway." She took a breath, gathering her courage. "Sam, I think I am ready for this to be a real marriage, not just in name but in truth." His eyes widened. "Natalie, you do not have to. I know I do not have to. I want to. These weeks with you have shown me that you are a good man, an honest man. I trust you, and more than that, I have come to care for you. When you come home in the evenings, I find myself watching for you. When you laugh at something I say, it makes me happy in a way I cannot quite explain. I want to give this marriage a real chance, to be a true wife to you in every way." Sam stood up slowly, pulling her to her feet. His hands came up to cup her face, his touch gentle. "Are you certain?" In answer, Natalie rose on her toes and kissed him. It was not like the brief, perfunctory kiss at their wedding. This was real and searching, a question and an answer all at once. Sam's arms came around her, pulling her close, and Natalie felt heat bloom in her chest, spreading through her limbs. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that since the day we met," he admitted. "Then why did you wait?" Natalie asked. "Because I wanted you to choose it. I wanted you to want me, not just need me." He kissed her again, softer this time. "I am falling in love with you, Natalie Young. I think I started falling that first day in the church, and I have been falling ever since." Natalie felt tears slip down her cheeks, but these were not tears of sadness or humiliation. These were tears of relief, of joy, of possibility. "I think I might be falling in love with you too," she whispered. That night, they consummated their marriage with tenderness and care, Sam's patience and gentleness washing away the last of Natalie's reservations. Afterwards, she lay in his arms, her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. No regrets, Sam murmured, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. None, Natalie said firmly. Not anymore. As summer gave way to autumn, their bond deepened. Natalie found herself completely, utterly in love with her husband in a way she had never been with Robert. What she had felt for Robert was familiar and comfortable, the affection of long acquaintance. What she felt for Sam was fire and lightning, passion and partnership all wrapped together. Sam proved himself invaluable to the ranch. He had a way with difficult horses, a patience that turned skittish colts into reliable mounts. He came up with ideas for improving water distribution to the far pastures, built a new gate system that made moving cattle between fields easier, and impressed Thomas Kensington enough that her father began asking Sam's opinion on ranch decisions. In October, Natalie realized she was pregnant. She told Sam one evening as they walked along the creek that separated the Double K from what had been Morrison land. The Morrisons had sold out and moved to California in September, unable to face the shame of their son's actions. "A baby," Sam breathed, his hand moving to rest on her still flat stomach. "Natalie, that is wonderful. Are you happy about it?" "I am terrified," she admitted. "But yes, I am happy." "Are you?" Sam swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed breathlessly. "I am beyond happy. I am going to be a father. We are going to be parents." They told her family that night over dinner, and her mother cried happy tears while her father clapped Sam on the back hard enough to make him stagger. Lily squealed with excitement about becoming an aunt. "Have you thought about names?" Lily asked. "Oh, I hope it is a girl, a little niece to spoil." "We have plenty of time to think about that," Natalie said, though privately she and Sam had already discussed it. If the baby was a boy, they would name him Jacob Thomas, after Sam's brother and her father. If a girl, she would be Rose Catherine, after both their mothers. The pregnancy was not easy. Natalie suffered from terrible morning sickness through the first few months, and Sam would hold her hair back and bring her cool cloths for her forehead. He took over more of her ranch duties, learning the bookkeeping system she had developed so that she could rest when the exhaustion became too much. "I am supposed to be taking care of you," Natalie said one afternoon when she woke from a nap to find Sam carefully updating the ledgers. "Marriage is not about who takes care of whom," Sam said, looking up with a smile. "It is about taking care of each other. Right now you are growing our child. That is more than enough." In late March of 1883, on a night when spring rain drummed against the roof of their cabin, Natalie went into labor. It was long and difficult, lasting nearly 20 hours. Sam refused to leave her side despite the traditional custom of fathers waiting outside, holding her hand and murmuring encouragement even when she cursed him for getting her into this situation. Finally, as dawn broke, their son was born, squalling and red-faced and absolutely perfect. Sam cut the cord with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face as the midwife placed the baby in Natalie's arms. "Jacob Thomas Young," Natalie whispered, exhausted but radiant. "Welcome to the world, little one." Sam leaned down to kiss her forehead, then his son's. "He is beautiful." "You are beautiful. Thank you for this gift, Natalie." Her father nearly broke down when they told him the baby's middle name, gruffly clearing his throat and excusing himself to check on the horses. Her mother cooed over her first grandchild, and Lily proved to be a devoted aunt, constantly wanting to hold the baby. The first year of Jacob's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and profound joy. Sam was a devoted father, walking the floor with the baby when he was fussy, changing diapers without complaint, making silly faces to elicit giggles. Natalie watched her husband with their son and fell in love with him all over again. On their first wedding anniversary, Sam surprised her with a gift. He led her to the eastern edge of the Double K property, where he had built a small house. Not grand, but solid and well-made, with 2 bedrooms, a proper kitchen, and a porch that overlooked the hills. "I have been working on it in my spare time," Sam explained. "Your father gave me this parcel of land as a wedding gift, said it was yours anyway as part of your inheritance. I thought it was time we had a real home, not just a cabin. A place where Jacob can grow up, where we can build our life together." Natalie walked through the house, touching the smooth wood of the walls, the sturdy furniture Sam had built with his own hands. In the larger bedroom, he had carved their initials into the bed frame, along with the date of their wedding. "It is perfect," she said, tears in her eyes. "Sam, this is the most wonderful thing anyone has ever done for me." "You gave me everything when you agreed to marry me," Sam said, pulling her into his arms. "A home, a family, a purpose. This is just me trying to give a little of that back." They moved into the house in June, and it quickly became filled with the sounds of family life. Jacob took his first steps in the parlor, said his first word, "Papa," while Sam was carrying him around the property. Natalie continued to help manage the ranch finances, now with Sam working beside her, the two of them forming an efficient partnership. In 1885, their daughter was born, and they named her Rose Catherine as planned. She had Natalie's auburn hair and Sam's gray-green eyes, and Jacob was fascinated by his baby sister, constantly wanting to help take care of her. Thomas Kensington, growing older and less inclined to deal with the day-to-day running of the ranch, began to rely more heavily on Sam and Natalie. When Jacob was 5 and Rose was 3, Thomas officially made Sam his partner in the Double K, changing the brand to include a Y for young. "You have earned this," Thomas told Sam. "You have worked hard, proven yourself loyal and capable. More than that, you have made my daughter happy. That is worth more to me than all the cattle in New Mexico." Sam's father and brother finally visited in the summer of 1887. It was an emotional reunion, with Sam embracing his father tightly. Years of separation finally ended. Jacob Young Sr. was a quiet man with kind eyes, and he fell in love with his grandchildren immediately. Jacob Jr., now 22 and engaged to a girl from Kansas City, teased his brother relentlessly about getting married first, but also pulled Sam aside to thank him. "You found what you were looking for," Jacob said. "I can see it in the way you are with Natalie, with your kids." "You are happy, Sam. Finally, truly happy." "I am," Sam agreed. "Sometimes I think about that day in the church, how different my life would be if I had just ridden through Roswell without stopping. I almost did, you know. I was planning to head straight through to Texas. But something made me stop, made me go into that church. I think it was fate. Or providence," his father suggested. "Perhaps you were exactly where you were supposed to be at exactly the right moment." In 1889, Natalie gave birth to their third child, another son they named Daniel. By then, Jacob was 7, Rose was 4, and Sam had become foreman of the Double K, effectively running the ranch alongside Natalie while her father eased into retirement. The ranch prospered under their management. They diversified beyond just cattle, adding sheep and goats, and Sam started a successful horse breeding program. Natalie's keen financial mind helped them navigate the fluctuating market prices, and they slowly expanded the ranch's holdings. Life was not without its challenges. There were droughts and disease, accidents and injuries. When Jacob was 10, he broke his arm falling from a horse, and Natalie and Sam spent a terrified night waiting to see if it was worse than the doctor initially thought. When Rose was 8, she came down with scarlet fever, and they took turns sitting by her bedside for 5 days until the fever broke. But they faced everything together, Sam and Natalie, a united front against whatever the world threw at them. The love that had begun as a desperate gamble, an impulsive decision in a moment of crisis, had grown into something unshakable. On their 10th anniversary, they went back to the church in Roswell where they had married. It had been renovated and expanded, but the altar where they had stood was unchanged. They renewed their vows with their 3 children watching, with Natalie's parents and sister present, with Sam's father and brother having traveled from Kansas City for the occasion. 10 years ago, Reverend Walsh said, now retired but still occasionally performing ceremonies, I married 2 people who barely knew each other. I worried that day that I was making a mistake, that I was binding together 2 people who would come to regret it. I have never been happier to be wrong. Samuel and Natalie, you have built something beautiful together. Your love is an inspiration to everyone who knows you. Sam and Natalie repeated their vows, the same words they had spoken a decade earlier, but this time weighted with the knowledge of what they meant, of what they had built together. I do, Sam said, his voice thick with emotion, and I would choose you again every single day for the rest of my life. I do, Natalie echoed, tears streaming down her face, and thank God I was brave enough to say yes when you offered to stand beside me. The celebration afterward was joyous, with music and dancing and a feast that rivaled their original wedding reception. Natalie danced with Sam under the New Mexico stars, the same stars that had watched over them for 10 years. Are you happy? Sam asked, pulling her close. Happier than I ever imagined I could be, Natalie answered honestly. When Robert left me at that altar, I thought my life was ending. I had no idea it was actually just beginning. Best decision I ever made, walking into that church, Sam said. Best decision I ever made, saying yes to a stranger, Natalie agreed. They kissed, surrounded by family and friends, by the life they had built from the ashes of heartbreak and humiliation. Their children cheered and Jacob called out, "Stop kissing! It is gross!" Sam and Natalie broke apart laughing, and Natalie scooped up Rose while Sam hoisted Daniel onto his shoulders. Jacob ran ahead of them, full of energy and life. As they walked back to their house, their real home that Sam had built with his own hands, Natalie thought about the journey that had brought them here. She thought about the girl she had been, standing heartbroken in a white dress, and the woman she had become, strong and confident and deeply loved. She thought about Robert Morrison sometimes, wondered where he had ended up, if he ever regretted his choice. But those thoughts were fleeting, like dust on the wind. Her life was here with Sam, with their children, with the ranch they were building into something that would last for generations. Over the years that followed, their family continued to grow and thrive. Jacob grew into a serious young man who loved the ranch as much as his parents did. He started working alongside Sam when he was 12, learning everything there was to know about running cattle and breeding horses. By the time he was 18, he could manage the ranch as well as any of the hired hands, and Sam knew the Double K would be in good hands when the time came to pass it on. Rose proved to have her mother's head for numbers, and her father's way with horses. She was fearless, climbing trees and racing her brothers across the scrubland, much to her grandmother's distress. Natalie encouraged her daughter's independent spirit, remembering how Robert had wanted to cage her own. Daniel was the quietest of the 3, a thoughtful child who loved books and learning. When he was 14, he announced his intention to become a doctor, and Sam and Natalie found a way to send him to medical school in Santa Fe, proud that their youngest son would have opportunities they had never dreamed of. Thomas Kensington passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1895, surrounded by family. At his funeral, Sam spoke about the man who had given him a chance when he was just a stranger, who had trusted him with his daughter and his life's work. Natalie held Sam's hand throughout the service, grateful for the bond her father and husband had formed, for the respect and love that had grown between them. Catherine Kensington, Natalie's mother, lived until 1901, long enough to see her great-grandchildren born. Jacob married a rancher's daughter from Albuquerque when he was 23, and they gave Sam and Natalie 2 grandsons and a granddaughter. Rose shocked everyone by marrying a teacher from Boston who had come west seeking adventure, but he proved to be a good match for her fierce spirit. As the 19th century gave way to the 20th, Sam and Natalie found themselves in their 40s, still working the ranch but gradually turning over more responsibility to Jacob and his wife. They had built something that would last, a legacy that extended far beyond the land itself. On a warm evening in May of 1902, 20 years after their wedding, Sam and Natalie sat on the porch of the house he had built for her all those years ago. Their hair had silver threads now, their faces were lined with the years, but when they looked at each other, they still saw the people they had been in that church, taking a leap of faith together. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Natalie asked, her hand in Sam's. "If Robert had not run, if you had not walked into that church." Sam was quiet for a moment, then shook his head. "Sometimes, but I cannot imagine any other life than this one. Cannot imagine not having you, not having our children and grandchildren. That day in the church, I told you I would stand beside you if you would have me, and you were brave enough to say yes. Everything good in my life came from that moment." "Everything good in mine, too," Natalie said softly. "I thought I was settling for second best, marrying a stranger instead of the man I thought I loved, but I was not settling at all. I was choosing the right path, even though I did not know it at the time. You were never second best, Sam. You were exactly what I needed, exactly who I needed." "We were what each other needed," Sam corrected. "Two people who had lost their way, finding a new path together." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun set, painting the New Mexico sky in brilliant shades of orange and purple. From inside the house, they could hear their granddaughter laughing as Rose told her a story. In the distance, they could see the lights of the main ranch house where Jacob and his family lived. Natalie thought about the scared, heartbroken girl who had stood at that altar 2 decades ago, and she felt a rush of gratitude for her courage. She had taken a chance on a stranger, on a wild, impulsive decision that everyone told her was crazy, and it had given her everything. "I love you, Samuel Young," she said, turning to look at her husband. "I have loved you for 20 years, and I will love you for however many more we get." "I love you, Natalie Young," Sam replied, bringing her hand to his lips. "Thank you for saying yes that day. Thank you for standing beside me and letting me stand beside you. Thank you for this life we built together." They kissed as the stars began to emerge, the same stars that had witnessed their vows, their struggles, their triumphs. Two strangers who had become partners, friends, lovers, and finally, two halves of a whole. The years continued to unfold. Daniel graduated from medical school and returned to New Mexico, setting up a practice in Roswell where he could serve the community that had raised him. He married a nurse from Santa Fe, and they settled near his parents, close enough to visit regularly but independent enough to build their own life. Sam and Natalie grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They watched their grandchildren grow, taught them to ride and rope, told them stories about the old days. The Double K Ranch continued to prosper, now spanning over 5,000 acres and employing 20 hands. In 1910, on a cool spring morning, they stood together in the cemetery where both Natalie's parents were buried. They were placing flowers on the graves, an annual tradition for the anniversary of Thomas's passing. "I hope I made him proud," Sam said quietly. "Your father took a chance on me, trusted me with everything he had built. I hope I proved worthy of that trust." "You exceeded it 1,000 times over," Natalie assured him. "Papa loved you like a son. He told me once near the end that letting you marry me was the best decision he ever made. He said he had prayed for years that I would find a good man, and then God sent you walking through that church door at exactly the right moment." Sam smiled, though his eyes were damp. "I miss him. I miss your mother too. They were good people." "They were," Natalie agreed. "And they live on in our children and grandchildren. Jacob has Papa's stubbornness and Mama's kindness. Rose has their courage. Daniel has their wisdom. We gave them a good legacy, Sam." As they walked back to their wagon, Sam suddenly stopped. "Natalie, I have been thinking about something. I am 51 years old now and you are 50. We have worked hard our whole lives. Maybe it is time to slow down a bit, enjoy what we have built." "What are you suggesting?" Natalie asked, intrigued. "Jacob is more than capable of running the ranch. What if we took a trip? Saw something beyond New Mexico for once in our lives. We could go to Kansas City, visit my father while he is still with us. Maybe go all the way to the ocean. I have never seen the ocean, and I think I would like to with you by my side." Natalie's face lit up. "Sam Young, are you suggesting we go on an adventure?" "I am," Sam confirmed. "We were so young when we married and we jumped straight into building a life. We never had a proper honeymoon. Maybe it is time to remedy that." They did exactly that, embarking on a 3-month journey in the summer of 1910. They traveled by train to Kansas City, where they spent time with Sam's aging father and caught up with Jacob Jr., now a successful newspaper editor with 4 children of his own. From there, they continued east, marveling at cities larger than anything they had ever seen. They visited Chicago, New York, and finally made their way to the Atlantic coast. Standing on a beach in Massachusetts, watching the waves roll in endlessly, Sam pulled Natalie close. "Worth waiting 28 years for?" she asked. "Worth everything," Sam replied. "But I have to tell you, as beautiful as this is, as amazing as this journey has been, I cannot wait to get home. New Mexico is in my blood now. The ranch, our family, that is where I belong." "Me too," Natalie agreed. "But I am glad we did this. Glad we took the time to see the world a little before we get too old to enjoy it." They returned home in late September, tanned and tired and filled with stories. Their children and grandchildren gathered to hear about their adventures, and the house rang with laughter and love. The years moved on, bringing both joys and sorrows. Sam's father passed away in 1912, and Sam made the journey to Kansas City for the funeral, saying goodbye to the man who had raised him and supported him through everything. Jacob Jr. came back to New Mexico with him for a visit, and the brothers reconnected after years of living separate lives. In 1915, when Sam was 56 and Natalie was 55, they celebrated their 33rd wedding anniversary with a quiet dinner, just the two of them. Their children and grandchildren wanted to throw a party, but Sam and Natalie declined, preferring to mark the occasion in their own way. 33 years, Natalie mused, sitting across from Sam at the table he had built for their first house. "That is longer than most people get. We have been blessed, Sam." "We have," he agreed. "Though I plan to stick around for another 33 if you will have me." Natalie laughed. "Deal. Though I do not know if my knees can take another 33 years of riding." "Then we will ride slower," Sam said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "Or we will sit on the porch and watch everyone else ride while we tell stories about the old days." "You make growing old sound appealing," Natalie teased. "Growing old with you is the greatest privilege of my life," Sam said seriously. "Every gray hair, every wrinkle, every ache and pain, it is all worth it because I get to experience it beside you." They made love that night with the same tenderness and passion they had shared throughout their marriage, bodies familiar but no less cherished, love deepened by decades of partnership and devotion. As they lay together afterward, Natalie said, "Sam, I want you to know something. I have never once regretted saying yes to you that day in the church, not even for a single moment. You gave me the most extraordinary life, and I am grateful for every second of it." "The feeling is entirely mutual, Mrs. Young," Sam whispered, holding her close. The world continued to change around them. The New Mexico Territory became a state in 1912. Automobiles became more common. Electricity reached Roswell, and the old ways of the West began to fade into memory and legend. But on the Double K Ranch, some things remained constant. Family, hard work, the land stretching to the horizon, and the love between Sam and Natalie Young. In 1920, they became great-grandparents when Jacob's oldest son had his first child. Sam was 61, Natalie was 60, and they marveled at how much their family had grown from that desperate moment in a church 38 years earlier. "From nothing to all this," Sam said, holding his great-granddaughter for the first time. "Who would have thought?" "I would have," Natalie said softly. "The moment you offered to stand beside me, I knew you were the kind of man who would build something lasting." They continued to work the ranch in their capacity as they aged, though Jacob had long since taken over the day-to-day operations. Sam still loved working with the horses, and Natalie still kept her hand in the financial side of things, though Daniel's wife, who had a gift for numbers, had taken over most of the bookkeeping. In the spring of 1925, Natalie fell ill with pneumonia. For 2 terrifying weeks, Sam barely left her side, holding her hand through fever and chills, praying harder than he ever had in his life. Daniel was there constantly, using all his medical knowledge to fight for his mother's life. When the fever finally broke and Natalie's eyes cleared, the first thing she saw was Sam's haggard face, and she managed a weak smile. "You look terrible," Sam laughed, relief making him giddy. "You scared me half to death, woman." "Sorry about that," Natalie whispered. "But I am not ready to leave you yet. We still have more life to live." She recovered slowly but fully, and by summer was back on her feet, though Daniel insisted she take things easier from then on. Sam became fiercely protective, hovering over her until she finally told him to stop treating her like she was made of glass. "I survived being jilted at the altar and 43 years of ranch life," she pointed out. "I think I can handle a little pneumonia." But she did slow down after that, and they spent more time together on their porch, watching sunsets and counting stars, holding hands and remembering their life together. On their 45th wedding anniversary in 1927, their entire extended family gathered for a massive celebration. There were over 50 people in attendance, all connected by the decision 2 strangers had made in a church 4.5 decades earlier. Jacob, now 44 and looking more like his grandfather Thomas every day, gave a toast. "To my parents, who proved that love does not have to start with romance. Sometimes it starts with courage and grows into something that lasts a lifetime. You taught us what it means to be true partners, to stand beside each other through everything. You are the foundation this family is built on, and we love you both more than words can say." There was not a dry eye in the house as Sam and Natalie stood together, their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren surrounding them with love. "Speech." Someone called out and everyone took up the cry. Sam looked at Natalie, who nodded encouragingly. He cleared his throat and spoke. 45 years ago, I was a drifter with no home and no future. I walked into a church in Roswell and found a heartbroken woman standing alone at the altar. I should have kept walking. What kind of sane man offers to marry a complete stranger? He paused as laughter rippled through the crowd. But something told me to stay, to offer what little I could. And Natalie, bless her brave heart, was crazy enough to say yes. He turned to look at his wife, his voice growing thick with emotion. You took a chance on me when you had every reason not to. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me everything. This life we built, this family surrounding us, none of it would exist without that moment of courage we both showed. I have never once doubted that saying yes to you was the rightest thing I have ever done. Natalie stood up beside him, taking his hand. When Sam walked into that church, I thought he was offering me a way to save face, a solution to a problem. I did not realize he was offering me the love of my life. But that is exactly what he was, and what he has been for 45 years. Sam, you are the best part of my life, and I would make the same choice 1,000 times over. They kissed as their family cheered, and the celebration continued into the night, filled with music and dancing and joy. As the years advanced further, Sam and Natalie settled into a peaceful rhythm. They no longer worked the ranch, but they were still involved, still offering advice and wisdom to Jacob and his sons. They spent their days reading, talking, receiving visits from their ever-growing family, and simply enjoying each other's company. In 1930, they celebrated their 48th anniversary quietly, knowing that time was becoming precious. Sam was 71, Natalie was 70, and both were feeling the weight of their years. But their love had not diminished. If anything, it had grown stronger, refined by time and experience into something pure and unbreakable. One evening in late summer, sitting on their porch and watching the stars emerge, Natalie said, "Sam, if you had to do it all over again, knowing everything that would happen, would you still walk into that church?" Sam did not hesitate. Every single time. No question, no doubt. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Natalie Young. Even though I was not your first choice," she asked. "Even though we only married because Robert ran." Sam turned to face her fully, his aged face serious. "Robert running was not why we married. We married because I chose to offer and you chose to accept. We married because something in me recognized something in you, because we were both brave enough to take a leap of faith. Robert was just the circumstance that brought us together. Our love, our life, that is all us. That is all our choice." Natalie felt tears slip down her weathered cheeks. "I love you so much, Sam. Thank you for standing beside me all these years." "Always," Sam promised. "In this life and whatever comes after, I will always stand beside you." They sat together under the New Mexico sky. Two people who had started as strangers and become something more than just husband and wife. They were partners in the truest sense. Two souls who had found each other at exactly the right moment and built something beautiful from the ashes of heartbreak. Samuel Young passed away peacefully in his sleep in March of 1932, 2 months before his 73rd birthday. He died in the house he had built for Natalie, in the bed they had shared for 5 decades, with his beloved wife holding his hand and his family surrounding him with love. His funeral was attended by over 100 people, testament to the life he had lived and the respect he had earned. Natalie stood at his graveside, heartbroken but not broken, supported by her children and grandchildren. "He was the best man I ever knew," she told Jacob as they walked away from the grave. "I hope he knew how much I loved him." "He knew, Mama," Jacob assured her. "Everyone who ever saw you two together knew. You loved each other in a way most people only dream about." Natalie lived another 4 years without Sam, but she always said that part of her died with him that March day. She spent her remaining time surrounded by family, telling stories about Sam and their life together, making sure that every generation knew how their love story began. On their 52nd wedding anniversary, Natalie visited Sam's grave with an armful of wildflowers. She sat beside the headstone that read, "Samuel Young, beloved husband, father, and friend," and talked to him as if he could hear her. 52 years since you walked into that church and changed everything, she said softly. Thank you, my darling. Thank you for seeing me when I was broken and believing I was worth standing beside. Thank you for every day, every moment, every kiss and laugh and tear we shared. I will see you again soon, and we will have all eternity to keep standing beside each other. Natalie Young passed away in her sleep in November of 1936, surrounded by her children and with Sam's name on her lips. She was 76 years old and had lived a full, rich life defined by love and courage. They buried her beside Sam, their graves side by side just as they had been in life. The headstone read, "Natalie Young, beloved wife, mother, and friend. She chose courage and found love." Their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren continued the legacy they had built, running the Double K Ranch with the same dedication and partnership Sam and Natalie had modeled. The story of how Sam and Natalie met became family legend, told and retold to each new generation as an example of how courage and faith could transform disaster into destiny. And in Roswell, New Mexico, the little whitewashed church where they had married still stood, a silent witness to the moment when a heartbroken woman and a wandering cowboy had taken a chance on each other and built something that would last far beyond their own lifetimes. Years after both Sam and Natalie were gone, their great-great-grandchildren would stand on the land they had built together, looking out over the ranch that had started with a desperate gamble and become a thriving legacy. They would hear the stories about the woman who was left at the altar and the passing cowboy who said, "I will stand beside you if you will have me." And they would understand that the truest love stories are not always the ones that start with romance. Sometimes they start with courage, with kindness, with a stranger's offer and a brave woman's acceptance. Sometimes they start with heartbreak and grow into something more beautiful than anyone could have imagined. And sometimes, the best love stories are the ones built not on passion alone, but on partnership, respect, and the daily choice to keep standing beside each other no matter what life brings. Sam and Natalie's story lived on, a testament to the power of taking chances, of choosing hope over despair, and of believing that sometimes the universe puts exactly the right person in front of you at exactly the right moment. All you have to do is be brave enough to say yes.